sad. I'm really so cute for her. I really want to run I got a minute down. How you doing? So wonderful to see everyone here on this warm winter day. And it is winter. I want you to remember that. Don't get too used to this good weather. I just have one clump of ice, hashtag snow, left in my driveway. But I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. It's also on the notes. Welcome to the Indy Story Slam, presented by Freetown Village and Storytelling Arts of Indiana, and sponsored by Maestro Organizing and WFYI. There's my Maestro dude here tonight. Let me scan the audience. He must be organizing somebody's house, not mine. Listen, tonight's theme is break in or break out. I haven't broken out anything lately. Nobody's window, nothing like that. At any rate, remember, this is supposed to be a true story. And that this true story should not be more than 5 minutes in length. Sure, you can go longer than that. But our elite judges will count off your score if you go too far. Where's my timekeeper tonight? Do I have a timekeeper? All right, when you see her raise her hand, you got 4 minutes to go. Yes, you can keep talking, but you're going to be in trouble. I'm sorry. The 4 minutes have been up. That's it. All right, listen. If you brought notes in your phone or in the palm of your hand, you're going to be disqualified. We can let you go ahead and tell it now. But the judges will take note. What do I need you to do?
We can just go like this going on here.
We can dance. All right. You might be trying to break into the bids. You know. At any rate, thank you for coming out tonight. I can tell you all kinds of stories about breaking in. For some reason, people keep trying to break into my house. I want to just open the door and let them in so they could see that they would leave me something instead of taking anything away. Now, I'm not a scary woman at all. Matter of fact, the first time somebody tried to break in my house, I used to sleep with all the lights on, jet black, no TV on, no noise, and something woke me up in the middle of the night. I don't know what it was. When I got up, went to the restroom, turned the light on in the bathroom, came back, went back to sleep. But at 9 o'clock that morning, when I opened up the dining room curtains, somebody had thrown a rock through my dining room window, a hole small enough to reach their hand through to get to the lock to try and unlock that window. Now, if you want to come to my house and take anything, you need to come when I'm not there. First rule. But at any rate, I want you to know it really ticked me off that they had broken. They probably chose the only window in my house that had a little trick to it. Somebody had bent the lock, so you had to like treat it just the right way to get that door, that window unlocked and up. And so I called a friend who came over, fixed my window. That was break-in attempt number 1. So I'm gonna tell you about a few other ones while I was at this residence. But before I do that, I'm gonna reach into this lime green basket. I'm gonna mix up all the cards, slips. I'm going to read the first name of our first teller. Remember our theme was break in or break out. Carol Robinson, you're number one. Carol, I'm gonna put this back on the stand because it's trying to have a short.
Well, unless you don't know, go ahead. I will because that one's really good.
Okay.
Um, in my other life, I was a teacher and I have lots of stories to tell, but tonight I'm going to talk about breaking in and breaking out. At the school I taught, it was a high school. There was a gas station on the corner. And it's lunchtime. If you were ever a teacher, you have 30 minutes to eat lunch. That means you have to go down to the cafeteria. You have to pick up your kids at the end. So there's 5 or 10 minutes. You have to go to the bathroom. If you have to run any papers off, then you have 5 minutes to eat your lunch. Well, this day, there was a special event. The Y had an after-school program, and they were doing a fundraiser. They invited judges to come, and they would be in the teacher's cafeteria. My friends decided they were going to go out for lunch, so I go down to Jugs, and you know how good their chicken is, their Nashville biscuits, their apple butter. They had potato salad, and it was $5. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, so I'm down there enjoying it. Nobody else came in, and there's all this food. Unbeknownst to me, as my friends were leaving the school, they saw a guy run across the parking lot with a gun. So they went back in school. The school was down in lock-in. I'm in the teacher's lounge with all that food. The kids are across the door in the cafeteria having lunch. But they had to stay in there because we're in lockdown. So I'm enjoying my lunch, lots of free time, and I'm locked in there. But then I thought, all right, after 15 minutes, I just can't keep eating chicken. So I went out and helped my friends. Then we were released. I helped the other teachers in the class, in the cafeteria. And we were released and everyone went back. I found out that the guy that ran around school ran around the back to the cafeteria where the judge's truck was. He got in the judge's truck and he ran away with it. He broke out. And he's falling down Brookville Road with the doors flapping until the police caught him. So I thought I was locked in and he kind of broke out. But now he's in a more serious condition and he might have to break out of jail one day. Thank you.
That's hilarious. He sort of broke in the truck and broke out with the truck. But I could have stayed down there eating that chicken, I'm here to tell you. Matter of fact, the owners of Jugs, their kids went to my school. I tried to call them for activity. A catering event, but if they have at least 200 people on a Saturday, they will not come to your house. Okay? At any rate, I have fond memories of that chicken and those fried biscuits. Listen, did you know that next month we're going to be back at the Aristocrat? And our topic for next month is spotlight. Yeah, that's what you say, but I don't believe you. Spotlight. I was trying to see if I could find the date. Um, March 18th is that date. But did you know that Adam Booth is coming to town? He'll be here Saturday, March 14th at 7 p.m. at the Eugene and Maryland Vic, Indiana History Center. His presentation, The Heron's Journey, uses spoken storytelling, quilting, and paper sculptures to tell an allegory filled with magic, challenges to opposition, and transformation. I need to be transformed. I'm going to be there. Listen, but I'm going to reach to my library basket and I'm going to pull out another name. First, I'm going to mix them up again. Because, you know, some people say that I'm picking favorites. That's not true. All of y'all are my favorites. But our next time is No Beauty. All right.
I also was a teacher. In fact, Carolyn and I taught together for a few years, not at that school. I was an elementary phys ed teacher, and first school I was at, I did not need keys because my office was behind the curtains on the stage. So I went 9 years with that. Then I went to a new school that had a real gym. I had an office. And I had a whole packet of keys because I need to get in lockers, locker rooms, the office, the school, the gym, you name it, I needed all of those keys. So about the second week I was at school, I came in, did normal, go to the bathroom, stood up, flushed the toilet, and watched my keys go down. All the way down, and I cringed because I had to go to my principal and say, only been here 2 weeks and I've already lost an entire set of keys. And he was not pleased, and he said, you need to call the downtown office and take care of that. And I did. Well, a couple months later, I was in a hurry. I had a lot of equipment to get out of the car. I pulled into the parking lot, slammed the door, ran up, got my stuff, got it in my office, and I hear a speaker going, someone left their car running with the keys in it in our parking lot. Who has a Pinto? Guess who that was? And so I had to have them call the police so I could get into my Pinto and get my keys. That was not a happy time either. And then this is in the same year. My first year at the school, I was staying late on a Friday to try to get ready for Monday. And what I didn't know was that you could go in your office where there's no windows and shut the door, and it locked. And so Friday at 5 o'clock, I'm in my office, which is about the size of that little cubby over there, and I can't get out. And no one was in the school except the head custodian. And so I'm on my phone calling and letting it ring and ring and ring and ring and ring and ring, and nobody answered. Nobody answered. And then I was ready to call my wife and say, you have to call the police and tell them to come and get me out of my building, out of my office, because I'm stuck. And you couldn't slide paper underneath. It was a very secure office. And finally, after a long time letting that phone ring, my savior, Sam, answered the phone. I said, Sam, this is Mr. Julie. I'm locked in my office. Can you come let me out? And he did. In 5 minutes, he was there and let me out, and he promised he would never tell anyone. And I promised I would never tell anyone. And I didn't tell anyone until about 2 years later, and I told my wife's cousin. And she said, that's one of the stupid things I've ever heard. I didn't want to do it. And I have to agree. And I stayed at that school for 24 more years. And I never lost a key. I never locked myself out of anything. And I never locked myself in anything. And then it's 24 years. Thank you.
You know, as a former educator, and I was a library media specialist, so I had all the equipment on lockdown. And it was all picked up, especially the days of overhead projectors and 16 millimeter film projectors and those humongous TVs on carts that children were forbidden to move around. And I had to really put signs on them to let them know why you could not have a child push that cart. Well, at the end of each week, everything was locked up and secured in the library media center. And everything had a barcode on it. And I was ahead of my time being the inventory queen. And one day I came back to school on a Monday and a teacher had left the VCR and TV in her classroom. And as you arrived at the bus entrance, there was this huge, dusty, empty cart. And they had nerve enough to look at me and say, well, did you take it? I said, why would I move that TV? We had had a break-in and somebody had helped themselves to that lovely VCR and monitor. Well, that wasn't the only time things are taken from that school, but that's all I'm going to tell you for now, because I want you to know that the As I Recall Storytelling Guild will meet March 18th at 2 p.m. over Zoom. Now, you don't have to leave your house. You can use your cell phone, your computer, your iPad, because everybody has a story to tell, and this is a chance to recall a moment from your life, try out a new story with an audience, or just listen to the other participants. People of all skill levels are welcome, and this event is free. You can share your short spoken life stories with other adults and elders, and we encourage you through careful listening and appreciation. And this guild meets on the third Wednesday of every month from 2 to 4 p.m. So I say, wake up from your nap and get on Zoom. And it's facilitated by storytellers Ken Ogus and Liz Meyer. If you want more information, go to our webpage or just contact Ken Ogus at kenogus@gmail.com. If you need more information, see me. I'm not leaving before I pull out another name from this blind green basket. I'm going to mix them up. I'm going to pull out a name because I know we're going to hear another story about break-in on break-in. And this story is from DJ McCord. Come on down.
Thank you, good to see you. I was living in San Antonio, Texas. I had a small business I just started, it was a franchise. And I was leasing a small building in downtown San Antonio. The building had been, before I occupied it, a security company building. It monitored home security systems for things such as break-ins. I had 2 employees at the time. It's another story how I got them. Yeah, what happened with them? Well, one day I was there with a woman who we'll call Cynthia. And we were getting ready for a class that we would have that evening in the building. And another employee of mine, who we'll call Vince, was out getting licenses or permits or something like that. He was out of the office at the time. And so there I was in the office with Cynthia, and we hear at the front door of this building a loud knock, knock, knock. So I go to the door. I open the front door. and I see this gentleman with a blue blazer, and he turned a little bit, and I could see 3 letters in the back of his blue blazer, and the letters said FBI. And I thought, oh my gosh, my past is caught up with me finally. Well, I then saw 2 other individuals behind him with the same kind of blue blazer. And he looked at me and he said, do you know someone by the name of Vince Russo? I said, well, yeah, I do. He works for me. The agent, after identifying himself as a special agent with the FBI, but, well, where is he? Do you know where he is? I said, well, he's out downtown doing errands right now. He should be back. He said, you don't know where he lives, do you? I said, well, I do. He lives with me. And it's another story how I got to this guy. And he was at the time when he was reading. I was so. But he was standing there, we were talking, we hadn't been talking very long, and I heard a noise in the back of the building. Remember, this was a security building. There was a back door, but it was big, thick, heavy, metal, black back door with a deadbolt. And soon after I had this conversation again with this special agent, I hear a noise in the back. And from the back of the building come 2 other gentlemen wearing the same kind of blue blazer, one of whom was brandishing a pistol. Now, I don't know how they got through that big, thick, heavy metal door that was deadbolted, and I know I didn't even unlock it. But if you ever wonder about the skill and ability of the FBI, don't wonder. Thank you. That's for the next story.
I think our next theme ought to be criminals in our lives. You know, I'm always watching those true crime stories. It's my favorite channel, especially since the football season is over. I'm on that station. But right now, you might want to know about an upcoming event with Freetown Village, the Garveyite movement in Indianapolis, 1919 to 1940, will be Thursday, March 19th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Indiana Landmarks, and Conversations in Indiana's African American History, a monthly gathering of voices, history researchers, and educators to deepen our understanding of the African American experience in Indiana, past and present. Our presenter will be Eunice Trotter, Director of Indiana Landmarks Black Heritage Preservation Program. From 1919 through the 1940s, Indianapolis hosted 2 divisions of Marcus Garvey's United Negro Improvement Association. I just found out that Lizzo's family was one of those families that actually went back to Africa with one of this movement. And that was on the episode of Finding Our Roots with Butch Gates, just in case y'all didn't know. Okay, I was on sidebar. Let me keep going. The self-improvement, the United Negro Improvement Association, part of the largest mass self-determination movement of African Americans in history, features some of the city's most influential leaders. The organization thrived before ultimately fading, leaving behind a powerful legacy and lessons from its demise. The event is free, but they'd like you to register just in case, just so they know how many people are coming. I think it's because they want to know how many cookies they need to bring, okay? Go to freetownvillage.org to register, all right? But let me reach into this lime green basket. Pull out a name. I reached all the way to the bottom for this. Let me see who it is. Jessica Heck, come on down.
It's 2017. It was 2017, and my husband, his mother, and our three small children are in the car on the way to New Jersey to meet my brother-in-law's new fiance for the first time. We've been planning it for months. But somewhere between when we left our house and we arrived at their house, she decided she just didn't want company. So my brother-in-law, before we've even met her, my brother-in-law meets us in the driveway and says, let's just go out for dinner. We were supposed to be staying with them for 3 days. So my first thought was, wow, we are not in Kansas anymore. This must be New England hospitality at its best. And my second thought was plan B. Let's find a plan B. So luckily we had our rickety pop-up camper with us because we were going to go on a little family vacation afterwards. So I found a campground a few miles from their house. And if you've never camped in New Jersey, I would not suggest it. The campground smelled like beef jerky, and there were more cigarette butts than squirrels. So by the time we woke up the next morning, I had a plan C. I told the kids, get your clothes on, we're leaving the camper here, we're gonna go to Washington, D.C. for 2 days. So we spent that Thursday at the Smithsonian, and we stayed in a hotel, and then we woke up the next morning and did all the monuments, and we ended on Friday evening watching the sunset go down behind the Lincoln Memorial. It was lovely. I was like, well, who needs planning? This is working out great. So we had walked 19 miles in 2 days with 3 little kids. We were tired. So we head back to our car and we walk down the ramp to the garage, and there's a grate covering the entrance and a little sign that says, this parking garage closes from Friday at 6 p.m. to Monday at 6 a.m. No exceptions. So I'm like, oh, great. Plan D. So I find a hotel and we check in, and the concierge is really nice, and he gives us a little luggage trolley, and my kids are swinging on it like it's a mobile jungle gym, because between the 6 of us, we have 1 purse for the weekend. And the kids are so excited. They're like, we don't have to wear pajamas. We don't have to brush our teeth. And we're like, yay. So we leave the kids with my mother-in-law, and we head back to where the car is. And on the way, it's like 10:30 at night by now. On the way, I'm thinking, I need to look at this like my kids are. This is fun. This is like an escape room for my car. Except with financial consequences if I can't get it out. So we go back and we start calling. We call the parking garage place. We call the security place. We go back to the hotel we stayed in and ask them, hey, has this ever happened to anyone else? What did they do? And they're like, no, only an idiot would park in that garage. And we're like, living in hospitality. This is great. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're getting desperate, and we call the police. And we're like, I know this doesn't sound like an emergency, but I've added it up in my head, and this is going to cost us like $900 if I don't get this car out between the hotels and the food and the clothes. Not to mention that my mother-in-law is supposed to be on an airplane going back home, and if she doesn't get on the airplane, she has to go on vacation with us, and that might kill me. So like all the time. So they come out, and for an hour, they look through their system and try and see if this has happened to anyone else and what they did. Nope, just us. And they walk around the perimeter trying to find extra entrances that we maybe didn't know about. They're looking, my husband and I are looking for sewer grates at this point. We're desperate. Next. So as the police are leaving, my husband happens to look up across the street, and he sees a light in the building across the street. And he says, I think there's somebody up there. And he said, I think that the parking garage goes like this, which would mean that it goes under that building too. So we went over and took a picture of all of the companies that are in this building. There are 40 of them. So we start going and Googling and calling all of them one by one to see if there's if anyone's available at this point in time. After 20, I'm like working on plan E, a 2-day itinerary for Washington, D.C. I've given up, but my husband keeps going. He keeps calling places and calling places. At call number 36, he gets a hold of a lady who is cleaning on the 9th floor, and she calls her supervisor, and he calls his building supervisor, and the building supervisor calls the parking garage supervisor. And at 4:38 a.m., a man straight out of bed, blurry-eyed, comes and opens the grate for us. And you will never hear me say anything bad about New England hospitality, because while my sister-in-law has never changed, you can find nice people anyway.
Oh, they're very slipping.
I love how you said my sister-in-law has never changed. They still married, sounds like, it. Okay. Liz. Break it in and break it out. Now, I grew up in an era where you could sleep with your doors open, unlocked, okay? You thought you had locked your door when you left your house. When you came back and didn't have any keys, if you tried the knob, it would just open up and you're going in and nothing will be taken, because really, you had nothing to be taken. But I remember when I went to my last school, and it was out in the country, and it was one of those innovative schools at the time. It was a science and technology magnet school. And it was out where there weren't very many houses, wasn't very developed. There was a house next door with a barn and a horse that we had to try and keep the kids away from during recess. But it was ideal when they saw computers being delivered to our school, that someone would break into one of the back wings and take as many box computers as they could. So this was at a time when most schools did not have burglar alarms. Back in the days when you could go in any door in any school and go through it. Before the lockdown drills. So they decided, instead of getting the hole in the parking lot repaired, they would take that money and invest in an alarm system. And I would like to tell you that nothing else was taken after that, but I'd be lying. So I'll just reach into this lime green basket and call Alan Phipps. Is that your name? Come on down, Alan.
So this is my first time doing something like this, so please bear with me. I want to tell you about our family's descent into a life of crime. We are wanted by the San Francisco police, and our crime is bathing in Camp Mather without a license. Now, our story starts in the early 20th century. San Francisco has a big earthquake. They realize they need fresh water. They do what any good municipality does, is they figure out how to steal it from somebody else. And they lobby Congress and they get the agreement to build O'Shaughnessy Dam in the High Sierras. Now, the problem with that is that it's in Hetchy Valley, which is actually in Yosemite National Park, but that doesn't matter. They built the dam, and it was a big thing. John Muir and the Sierra Club versus the man in San Francisco. John Muir lost and died a year later, and some of us are still pretty salty about this. Camp Mather was the construction camp that they built for the workers who were building the dam. And after the dam was completed, the city of San Francisco decided to repurpose it as their personal playground for their citizens, for a fun weekend out in the wilderness. You have to know that if you are in Camp Mather in the High Sierras, you are, for all practical purposes, in the city of San Francisco. And the only way you can go to Camp Mather is if you are a resident of San Francisco. And that's great. It's as if they said, hey, let's have this nice little place for a retreat for our citizens in the shadow of the abomination we built in Hetchetchy. As I said, I definitely have opinions about this. So anyway, fast forward to 2012, and the family and I decide we're going to go on a big Western road trip, culminating at Yosemite National Park in the High Sierras. And we pulled our 30-foot camper across the country and landed in a national forest campground. And national forest campgrounds are really long on beauty and very short on amenities. There's no electricity. If you want water, there's a spigot as you enter the campground. If you need to use the toilet, it's a pit toilet. Needless to say that hygiene is not the primary consideration when you camp, even if you have all the luxuries of a 30-foot travel trailer. Now, Camp Mather, on the other hand, had all the amenities. It had cabins, it had electricity, it had shower houses and flushing commodes and a general store, as long as you were a resident of San Francisco, which, as I mentioned, we were not. So after about 3 days, we were feeling maybe a little bit nasty and decided that we needed to do something about our hygiene. And we thought, we're going to go to Camp Mather and use their amenities. And my wife, first of all, she exerted executive authority here and said, I'm going to take a shower in the trailer. But the rest of us decided we were going to break into Camp Mather and use their shower house. And we had to plan very carefully for this. Like, for instance, what would we say if we were confronted? Where from San Francisco did we live? What cabin were we staying? If somehow or another we had to disperse unexpectedly and scatter to the four winds, what would we say? My son Ian said, how about we say scatter? So the upshot of all this, though, is that this was the first steps that I was leading my children into an inevitable life of crime. Their first glimpses of the underbelly of society. Or not, whatever. My 10-year-old daughter, Maura, she was terrified. I thought it was a lark. So anyway, we carefully reconnoitered the camp. We decided, okay, Tuesday afternoon is the date. We take our truck. We pull slowly into the camp. We got out of our truck, headed into the shower house, and on our way to our life of crime. Now I'd like to regale you with the stories of the high-speed chase through the High Sierras with the Camp Mather authorities chasing after us. We had to break Nathan out of prison after he was detained. And Hannah got lost and 4 hours later showed up battered and bruised after tramping through the forest and the mountains for 4 hours. And when we got back, we camouflaged the truck and hid the kids. And my wife and I pretended like we were a poor childless couple from Paducah, rather than a family of four from Indiana, because we knew there was a bolo lot. I'd like to tell you all of these things, but absolutely none of them are true. We went in, we took our showers, we came out, we got back into the truck, and we left. It was really anticlimactic. But it's one last act of defiance to stick it to the man. We went to the general store there in Camp Mather, and we bought overpriced ice cream for all the kids, as if to say, go ahead, Camp Mather in San Francisco and your water syndicate. We're going to do it anyway. And that is our story of our life.
Thank you, but I think you paid for that shower with that ice cream. Listen, that was hilarious. You forgot to say you came out clean as a whistle. But I'm gonna reach into this lime green basket one more time. But you know, this is the story of crime. Break in after break in. I have 911 on speed dial. But right now, is it Shelba Waldron? Shelba? Come on there.
So when I heard the topic today, I want to tell a story about breaking out of my favorite topic, which is breaking out of my bras. When I was in middle school and high school, I was very athletic and I was fairly flat chested. But as they make you do as a woman coming up in this world, they made us train them to get a little bit bigger. And so I had to wear these little A-cup bras all through high school, with all the other girls filling out. And, you know, it's hard as a young adolescent. As time goes on, I'm a little obsessed with my bras. And I get into my 20s and I'm now out of college. I'm living in Florida. I'm going to the beach in the Tampa Bay area. And I have a nice figure, a nice C cup. And I'm starting to spend $50, $60, $70 on Victoria's Secret bras with, you know, the little lacy things up here and lacy straps. And I'm going clubbing and I'm looking good and I'm feeling good about myself because finally I made it. And little did I know, I didn't quite appreciate it enough because you get into your 30s and you become a little bit more sedentary. And you get into your 40s, you start having the babies and they become bigger, saggier, droopier. And all of a sudden you're wearing bras and you're buying bras for $50 and $60 just for comfort. And I'm here to tell you, because you've never worn them, there's nothing comfortable about anything about these oppressive, satanic pieces of fabric that wrap around you like a boa constrictor. And but you're still paying with $50, $60 for them. So we get into the pandemic and we're all forced inside and I'm working from home. And I started probably how a lot of people did. I was getting up and I put on makeup and I would get dressed and go and sit in front of a camera on Zoom. And it took me a couple of weeks and I was like, oh my gosh, I can wear yoga pants. And so I started wearing yoga pants. And I incrementally started changing how I dressed for work. You know, and then I started wearing like sweatshirts and t-shirts because really who cared? But it took me like 6 months to realize that I didn't have to wear a bra to work anymore. And I was the most excited person that could ever exist. But it took me even longer to realize that I could go out in public with a bra on. For the first time since like 6th grade, I could literally walk the streets because I was in my 50s now. And when you're in your 50s, you start to become invisible. And the first place I went was Kroger. And I'm literally like, I'm going to take these Fruit Loops. Anybody care that I'm taking these Fruit Loops and putting them in the basket? Okay, no, okay, fine. I'm going to go down here and, you know, grab some chips. Yeah, nobody cares. So I started experimenting even more. I would go to a bar and I'm like, I'd like to order a cocktail. Nobody cares. Started doing restaurants. I still didn't have the nerve to go to work. Like we have to go to the office like once a week. And I'm like, I really want to go without a bra on, but I can't. I still got a professional career, blah, 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 blah. And what I started to call it, excuse the expression, but living in my freedom and my tits. And so I would get to a point where I come in when I did have to wear a bra, and I would go to the whole household, I'm taking my bra off. I'm going to be free. Nobody cared. I get in the car, I take it off. It's like a little magic trick, and I'm very excited for it. And I'm really actually feeling, for the first time as a woman, less oppressed. Believe it or not, I actually feel good because I'm feeling good without having this horrible thing wrapped around me. Yes, I'm wearing a bra right now. But so, you know, I started to just realize that I can look the way I want to look and I can feel good about myself. Finally, in my 50s, and I was okay with being invisible. Until last year, my teenage son, Brain, has a girlfriend for the first time and he wants to bring her home. And I say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You know, what can I do? Let's order pizza and, you know, I'll go get some sodas and whatnot. He's like, we don't need any of that. You know, we'll help do a pizza. And he goes, but you could wear a bra. And I was like, so I'm just here to say that they got the cheap pizza that night and the generic sodas. And he no longer has a girlfriend.
Drama teacher. That was hilarious. Thank you so much. Oh, for the good old days. Listen, I want to thank our judges. They're doing a great job trying to give them time to score. Somebody folded this real tiny. They thought I wouldn't find it. But it was in the lime green basket. Right now, we have a story from Donna Jones.
Hey there. I'm sitting back there and I'm trying to decide which story to tell. Because, well, I don't think my life is that interesting, but some situation forcing me to think about it. Shit's crazy. But several years ago, first of all, my dad died 2003. He left me two houses. They're next door to each other. Now, I put one of them up. I'm living in it. Been living in it since 2001. When his sister who lived in it died. Well, I had to move out of that house. And I had to move into the house next door. Where are they living? However, some of you might remember this. I was sleeping in the bedroom, and I was getting dressed in my bedroom on the second floor of the first house. And I heard this noise. I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I walked down the steps and down there, and it was, oh. But when I finally did decide to come downstairs, I discovered that some little weasel had called the guy who had bought the house, who lived in Texas, and decided that they were going to like scam the guy who lived in Texas, put a new lock on the door, and rent the house. Because the guy who bought the house, who lived in Texas, had put it up on Zillow. So, you know, I'm locked in the house. Because prior to that, another little weasel had tried to break in the back door, beat the crap out of it, so I had to hammer it shut. Screw shut. So I'm locked in the house. When I finally do get out of the house, I have to move my stuff from one house to the other. So I'm trying to do that. However, I have to keep that back door shut. The front door is locked. I don't have a key. So what do? I break in through the breakfast window. Because there was a ladder, a 4-foot ladder, at the house next door. So I bring the ladder, put it outside, at that window. My neighbor, 2 doors down, like to get drunk in the middle of the night and sit on his front porch and watch the traffic. Decides to call the police. Police show up at my house. Not the house I'm living in, the first house. Because Frank, that was his name, he's called the police. I get into the house, I'm coming back out with some of my stuff. Put your hands in the air. Come out. Okay, I come out. Now, as I want to do, because my mother trained me well, if you go in that store and you touch anything, I am going to eat the crap out of you. So I walk around all the time, most of the time, with my hands in my pockets. And have you ever watched any of the crime videos that are on YouTube? Or you ever had to deal with the police in a very up close and personal way? Hands in pockets, scared the bejesus out of them, because you don't know what you have in there. Take your hands out of your pockets. Take your hands out of your pocket. That went on for a while. Then, Frank, who lives down the street, 2 doors down, goes, "Hey," said, "Thanks, good looking out, Frank." As it turned out, one of the cops who was there that night had also shown up when I called the police to tell them about the weasel who was changing the lock on my front door. And he goes, "Oh, yeah." That's a true story.
I'd like to tell you after the first time my house was attempted to be broken into, I decided to get an elaborate alarm system. Back in the days, we had to buy the whole system and they installed it before they had the monthly fee. So I can't get new windows because if I get new windows, I have to get a new alarm system. They don't want to do it for free. So my old windows are still there. But I can tell you that one time, I set the alarm off just by laughing. That's my loud girl. And the police came. And once the alarm went off, and I was afraid to go in, and the policeman came, and we all walked into the house together through the garage into my living room, where I had an entire grade level's worth of papers in neat little piles all over the living room floor. And the policeman was, "Is this what they did? Is this what they did?" I'm looking around to see what he's talking about. No, that's just the average daily mess of my house. So I really love my police officers, and I don't want them to come to my house unnecessarily. But I'm gonna reach into this lime green basket, and I'm gonna pull out another lime. Oh, this one was way down on the bottom, like it was trying to hide. But Lisa Bosman, come on down.
Hello. My story is titled Time to Break Out the Kevlar Gloves. A few years back, my husband and I were in the Gulf Shores on a family vacation fishing. If you've been to the Gulf Shores, you know that there's this big long pier about 30 feet off the water. And that particular evening, it was beautiful out. The weather was perfect. And my husband finally got a bite. My husband's name is Jimmy. Jimmy reeled up that fishing line, and wouldn't you know it, there's a little one with a catfish, about 6 inches from front to end. We knew it wasn't a keeper, so he goes to take it off.
But it was dark out and he quickly called me over because he's having some troubles. He says the hook is stuck within the catfish. I grab my phone, turn on the flashlight as I'm walking over, and I realize the hook is indeed out of the catfish, but now the little catfish has hooked my husband, Jimmy. And it wasn't just a regular hook. Through his hand, between the thumb and index finger, and this webbing right through it. He tried shaking it off. It did not come off. A passerby said, just pull it out. Seems like a natural man thing to do. So he pulls it out, throws it back in the ocean, and immediately blood gushes out. I run to the bathroom to get some paper towel. He runs to the hose to start spraying it off to wash it off. We put the towel on the wound, and the blood is not stopping. We go to our phone, match WebMD, right? WebMD. What do we do? Catfish stain. There's nothing. Nothing on WebMD. So we go to Google. The first site we find says, call 911 and go to the hospital immediately. This is an emergency. There is toxins that are in there. We had been drinking, so we thought, let's double check. Let's do another website. We go to the next website, which says, it's not that big of a deal, but swelling will happen. Take some ibuprofen, put ice on it, and it will heal. The limited ice that we have was reserved for our cocktails. We didn't have any ibuprofen. Website number 3. Website number 3 says, if you take the wound and rub it on the slime of the catfish, that'll take away the infection. At this point, our options were limited. Somebody had just caught a catfish, and so my husband runs over there, blood still coming out. And he says to this fisherman, can I rub your catfish? Fisherman says, sure. For the required 10 to 15 seconds, Ginny is rubbing that catfish. But he says it worked. So at the end of the day, it worked. Yeah. The next day, we go to the bake shop and we learn from the guys that run the bake shop that it's those small catfish that are the problem. Because when they're born, they have these needle-like appendages that over time they get dull. And so it's just these small ones that are the trouble. So my husband learned his lesson, but we also learned our lesson. My husband can only catch the small ones. So now, whenever he reels in that small one, we say, time to break out the Kevlar gloves.
I want you to know I was thinking, well, they can't use ice. They gotta say that for their drinks. So you said it, that was great. Oh, break out. No, break in or break out. That's what the thing is. You know, once I went to school, I was teaching my first job after grad school. And between the time I left home and the time I got to work, I just broke out in hives. Hives everywhere. And I didn't know what the problem was. And my principal looked at me and she said, you can't come in here like that. You need to go to the doctor. Now, you know, as a teacher, you have to make these elaborate plans to be gone. Now, she didn't care. She just told me to go to the doctor and get out. She was afraid I would give something to the children. You know, they always give something to you. That's how it works. So by the time I left the school and drove to the doctor's office, they had completely disappeared. I don't know what happened. I think I was just allergic to going to that school. It never happened again. And that was the only time I actually broke out without a reason. Now, if you're thinking about a break-in or breakout story you haven't turned into your little slip, there's still time. Got some blank slips still out in this room. But right now, our next teller is Kay Weeks. Come on, Kay. Thank you.
So ironically, I was second guessing doing this, and I broke out to go to the restroom, and you broke me in and put my slips in the basket. So, I am claustrophobic, and I have a lot of breakout stories about that. My story in regard to how I became claustrophobic. I was 3. I don't have memory of it. I just hear it from family. When I was about 2 years old, locked myself into the bathroom, and it became a big ordeal because we were like on a second story. They couldn't convince me or instruct me on how to open. My older sister was on the other side, telling me to turn the little knob. I was getting a little frantic. They ended up calling the fire brigade, and a fireman came, all in garb through the bathroom window, and I'm getting broken into by a monster. So that is how it's explained to me. So I can logically tell myself when I have a claustrophobic incident and try to talk myself out of it. Well, one particular time, because I tend to get in situations where I get locked in or all the things. When I was about to interview for a job, my dad was visiting in town, and it was really kind of tight for me dropping him off at the airport and me getting to that interview, where I really wanted to make a good impression and get that job. And he was like, "Are you sure you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to spend as much time with you as possible." So drive him there. I park at the very top of the car park, so there's going to be no question about what level, because I know I'm on the outside in the sun. We go down, go across, and make it. I drop him off. We say our goodbyes. He's like, "I hope you do well." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have plenty of time." And so head back, get on the elevator, hit the button to go down, nothing happens. And go up, nothing happens. For whatever reason, the elevator just decided it didn't want to open its doors anymore. So the claustrophobia hits me a little bit, and I'm talking myself through all the things. I have the whole elevator to myself. All this air is mine. I get to breathe all this air. It's going to be okay. So I start pacing back and forth, breathing. I hit for the call button. Takes a bit for somebody to get back with me. I start singing. The only thing I can think of is "How Great Thou Art." So I just keep singing that over and over again. The maintenance people, they come and they, say, "We'll get you there." And then, so I'm just pacing the floor going, I have all this room. I have all this air. I have all this room. People are coming. And then the maintenance people get there, and then they start to try to break in. And I see them struggling with those double doors, and I see it heaving and towing, and them getting it, and I'm getting more aware of how I'm stuck and how I can't break out until they break in. And I make the mistake of mentioning that I'm claustrophobic, which unfortunately sent my savior into a little panic attack, which I was thinking to myself, no, I should be the one being nervous. I don't want to calm you down because I'm trying to calm myself down. Needless to say, after all that, he was able to break me out. I was able to get to that interview with just minutes to spare. And thankfully, when I'm very nervous and edgy, I giggle a lot. And so that played well for my interview, and I got that job.
That's a great job interview story. Now listen, we are not charging you a single solitary dime to come and participate in this event. So if you want to make a donation to Storytelling Arts of Indiana, just go online and and go to storytellingarts.org/donate or text SAI to 44321 on your smartphone. Your generosity in any amount goes a long way in helping Storytelling Arts provide high quality storytelling performances and outreach programs, including this one. But I'm going to reach into this lime green basket. It's getting kind of skimpy down here at the bottom. So if you think of another story, let me know. But right now, our next teller is Lisa Devon. Come on down.
This is my origin story. When I was 6 years old, my dad left us. I remember the day he told me very vividly. I cried, my mother cried, even my baby sister cried. He just seemed angry because he didn't like it when everybody cried. When I was 13, my mother married the only boyfriend she ever had that I disliked the very second I met him. I got this gross feeling in the pit of my stomach that only got worse. He bullied me and my sister, and my mother let him. And I know she was tired of being the bad guy parent, but what I will not understand is why a 40-year-old man is so threatened by a 13-year-old girl that he has to run her down even when she's not around. Like, what is that? I would never understand that. And so I was considered the black sheep because I was drinking and smoking and hanging around with boys, but no one ever thought to consider why I am self-medicating with drinking and smoking and boys. So my life continues, and at 21, I graduate from college, and there is no way in hell I'm going back to my mother's house. So I get a job as a nanny because I also want a baby, and this job I was a place to live and a baby. It was great. And these people are so different from my Southern Baptist upbringing that I got introduced to concepts and things I have never heard of. And then a lot of them are the way that I live my life now, but I couldn't receive them at that time. And I have learned something: you can't receive anything that you're not ready for, no matter how frustrating you are to other people. So at 25, I was finally able to break out of this life. And I got a job 700 miles away from my family in Indianapolis. And I moved away from everyone and everything that I have ever known, and people who didn't know how to love a weird, loud, depressed, sensitive person with ADHD. Because when I was coming up, only boys had that. So on my first day of my job, I met the man who would become my husband. And 27 years later, he's still my husband. And I met so many other wonderful people who liked me for who I actually was, instead of trying to mold me and make me into a person they thought I should be, and try to turn me into what they wanted me to be. So I also found acupuncture, which helped a lot with the depression, and I also found poetry. Poetry saved my life so many times. I could spend an hour telling you about it. Maybe one day I'll even write a poem about it. You'll see. And a station. But I learned to love myself, a thing that I was never taught. In fact, I was never even allowed to believe I was worthy enough to love myself, because I was born a sinner, and I would always be a sinner, and nothing I ever did was good enough. And so I get here, and I begin to blossom, and I begin to bloom, and learn all of these things. And one of the things that I've learned is that every single setback, every heartbreak, every firing from a job, everything that goes wrong in your life is pushing you away from the thing that is not for you, and pushing you toward the thing that is for you. So even though it might look ugly right now, it might be painful right now, that's where you need to go. So I'm with this man, right? I'm 31, and I'm pregnant for the first time, and I find out I have gestational diabetes. Now, I don't know if you know, but pregnancy is a license to eat, and dieting not my strongest suit, okay? But I have to go on a diet because what happens is the baby gets too big, And knowing how the baby comes out, I'm vigilant. So I go on the diet and exercise, and I feel fantastic. Even while I'm pregnant, and I realize I haven't felt like crap every single day of my life because I ate junk food and had equal junk mood. And I learned to exercise and all these things. I learned all these things. I learned affirmations, and I learned how to love myself. And so eventually the stepmother passed, and I raced home to take care of my mother, right? In the only way that I know how to earn her love, which is doing chores and chores and chores. And I found that she is redoing a chore that I did behind my back. And I'm aghast. And I'm 13 again, trying to earn her love. And then I just laughed because I realized that nothing I ever did was good enough. And that I would never be good enough for you. But along the way that I've learned that I was always good enough. And whatever problem that your husband or you had with me was your problem. It was never my problem. And I'm so glad that I broke out of that mold to come here and learn that from loving people who loved me. And so I'm a superhero now. I'm not fighting crime. I'm fighting hate. I'm fighting self-hate every second of every day. And if you find yourself in a place where you need love, you need somebody to build you up and tell you how fantastic and worthy and awesome you are, you come and see me. Because I have got love to spare. Because I am a superhero.
Thank you, Kay. We need more superheroes like her. Listen, don't forget, next month, we're at Aristocrat Pub at 5212 North College Avenue, and the theme is Spotlight. And I'm gonna try and remember that. Okay? But right now, if you want to break in or break out, I'm reaching into the lime green basket, and I'm pulling out a name. And our next teller is, oh, that's two, I think. Let's see. Now the paper's just pointing. Our next teller is Sam Howard. Samantha, come on in.
So normally my stories surround 3 different topics, either my kids, my dog, or my anxiety. This story has nothing to do with any of those, but I will say that several minutes ago, I did text my husband and said, if I were to tell this story in particular, will I get fired? So that's what the anxiety plays in. He said no, and he left. Anyways, so my freshman year of college, I think that I am just a big dog. We come home, my roommate and I, we knew each other in high school. We come home over winter break, and our hometown is just so lame. There's nothing to do. We go to the local mire, we do a couple laps just to seem like we're, out and about, and then we drive around listening to the radio. I get a text from a guy I worked with over the summer, and I should preface this by saying this is a kid, and I knew this back then, he's still the same way now, and I mean this very lovingly, he could sell salt to a slug. But for some reason, my phone lighting up at that point in time was cool, and whatever he had for us on the agenda, we were down. So we meet up with another friend who is older than we are. We are 19 at the time, and she said, the only thing I have on me is UV blue. And if you're familiar, I'm sorry, and if you're not, I hope you never figure it out. So we take what we can, and he gives us the address to his house. He says, my parents are out of town. I'm having a little party. Come in through the back door. So we get there, and we come in the back door, and he seems a little rushed. And we're like, again, he's kind of an odd dude, but we're here. We're gonna be cool. We'll post an album on Facebook later, and everything's fine. And immediately he rushes us to the basement. Red flag number 2. We look around, and there are a ton of boxes, but they're neatly packed, and it is a basement. And anytime we try to go upstairs, he's like, well, just wait a second. Just wait a second. So we're playing beer pong, we're flirting with boys that we don't know and we'll never ever see again. Having a great time taking pictures so we can again show people that we have socialized in this hometown over winter break. And my friend and I decided to go up to use the restroom. And we look around, I'm like, isn't it kind of weird that they don't have a lot of furniture? It's like, she's like, yeah, but I mean, I don't know, maybe they're just they're simple folk. And we're like, all right. So then we go to the bathroom, which I kid you not, from tile to ceiling is bubblegum pink. In a bathroom that is decades older than we are and has not been touched since. And she's going to the bathroom and we're yapping. We've had some drinks. And I say, I really need to brush my hair. They have to have a brush in here somewhere. And I open the drawer, and the only brush I can find looks like it was out of a Disney fairy tale. It has like these soft bristles that I've never experienced before. In the back is this elaborate design, and it looks like a family heirloom. And I'm like, well, this is kind of weird, but whatever. I start brushing my hair, and then I noticed that the perfume looks like something my grandma used. And I'm like, okay, maybe we should kind of get out of here. Something seems off. And as we're leaving, all of a sudden we hear a knock on the back door yelling, police. So in my UP blue state of mind, I decide to hide in a closet. And while all this is happening, we hear the police officers looking around as if, we're kind of like giggling in the closet as if they can't hear us. And I'll never forget, and Katy Perry's fireworks is playing in the background. Come to find out that that was not that kid's house. No surprise to anyone here. It was actually his grandparents' house. And they had a few weeks prior been moved to an assisted living facility. Which means that the neighbors for about an hour and a half watched about 15, 18, 19, 20-year-olds slowly break in through the back door. And then they decided to call the police. So as a pretty strict rule follower, that was the first and last time I ever broke in.
I'm finding out there are a lot of hooligans in this. That's the only word I can use for it. I remember being in grad school and going out with a friend of mine who was married with a 5-year-old kid. And we were out at a bar. This is like 74. I think I graduated 75. And she met these guys, and I'm thinking, she says, we're going to go with them. So I'm driving my little red Maverick, and we're following them to their house. And we go in, and Leslie disappears with this other guy. This other guy's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm watching him as he deadbolts the back door. And my mom's voice is in my head. And I said, Leslie, I'm getting ready to go. I said, listen, you can unlock that door right now, or I can break a window and climb out. But I'm out of here. And she said, I thought you were a wild and crazy girl. I said, I'm not that crazy. My mama taught me common sense. But I'm going to reach in this lime green basket, and I'm going to pull out a name. It was all curly and everything, just waiting to pick it up. And it's Stephanie Edwards. Come on down.
When she says, you'll be thinking of something as everybody's telling the story. And all of a sudden I remember everybody else had a police story. I have one too. Years ago, I was a single parent and had two, at that time they were preteens and teens. And I had quit school many years ago. Before that, and I had all these little jobs. Well, my moms had put a beauty shop in my basement, so I did hair. Of course, I got divorced after that, so that was my way of making money. And when I would leave the house, I made sure that I had an alarm because I was a single parent, I had these little teenagers. So I had an alarm on the house. But I also lived in an old house with a heavy front door. And a strange lock, and sometimes the key didn't work to the lock. But I always said, well, the back door is relatively safe, and I've got a key to the back door. So one day I was coming home from school because I went back to school after I was doing hair. I was in hot industrious and everything. Well, the key wouldn't open the front door, so I said, oh, I probably go in the back door. Because after all, when I do hair, my clients come in the back door. So I know it's possible. Opened up the back door, and I remembered, oh, I had bolted the kitchen door. So you can't get into the house from the back door because the kitchen door is bolted shut. And so I said, well, what I can do is I can go behind the basement and I'll call somebody to come and go in front door. Well, before I could call anybody, there was this big giant policeman standing at the back door with his gun drawn and that lights out. And I said, oh my God, I'm broken into my house. And the policeman shoot me or something, you know. And he came to the top of the steps. He said, is anybody down there? I started to say no. But I'm standing at the bottom of the steps looking up and I said, I'm here. I backed myself out. He said, oh, really? I said, yeah, really. I can get in the back door. And he said, well, why didn't you just go in the house? I said, there's a bolt on the back door. And I just can't get in the house. And you know, gotta call somebody. He said, when are you gonna come? I said, so, and the thing is, I'm sitting there thinking about this story. I can't remember how it is. I must have I am, but I have no idea. If I call somebody, but the police traumatized me so bad. That I think I'm just going down. That's no change, but that's my police story.
Hilarious. Oh, now I know somebody out there might think of another story you might want to tell. Now it's not too late. Let me remind you that you can come to hear Adam Booth, The Heron's Journey, on Saturday, March 14th at 7 p.m. at the Eugene and Marilyn Glick Indiana History Center. I can't wait to hear him. I know it's going to be a fantastic evening. He's from West Virginia. He is a 2022 West Virginia Folk Artist of the Year and has been awarded the Governor Arts Award. He blends traditional mountain folklore, music, and an awareness of contemporary Appalachia to create original, forward-thinking story artistry. So I'll be there. Join me. Hopefully there'll be a wine bar somewhere. You know, it's Lent. You know, we have things converge at the same time. Chinese New Year, Ramadan, Mardi Gras. I said, I need to give up something. I had the misfortune of having to have a colonoscopy yesterday. It's the worst thing in the world. Not the procedure itself, but the prepare for the procedure. Oh my goodness. Everything that wanted to break out of me broke out. And I was way overdue, you know. And, you know, I love our doctors. I want to give them accolades. But I call in and they tell you about this horrendous diet you must have of clear liquids the day before. And I call them and say, you know, beer is clear. Wine is clear. So they specifically tell you that you cannot have those things. So I keep going through the list of things to do, and there's time. You gotta look at the time. You gotta drink the stuff in a timely manner. Anyway, I'm glad to say I survived and I was all right. I gotta go to another doctor's appointment. I don't know which one to make next, but you know what? I keep telling people, going to the doctor is not a social event. Okay? Never mind, I digress. But I break out in a cold sweat every time the phone rings and it's with somebody with a report. But right now, Rick Phillips is going to tell us his break-in, break-out story. We say the best for last, right?
Ring, ring, ring. That was my father's telephone in January of 2006. On January, my father picks it up and he says, hello. The voice on the other end says, this is Sergeant Martin of the Indiana State Police. Do you know a Betty Baker? Why, yes, that's my aunt. Why would you be calling about my aunt? This is where I have to stop and tell you a few things about my aunt. First, she's not my aunt. She's my father's aunt, but I still call her Aunt Betty. Second, she's not really my father's aunt because, in fact, my grandmother was gifted to her family, and being gifted in 1913 meant that somebody really gave her to the family. And third, my Aunt Betty was married 7 times. But as she would quickly add, when she said that she had been married 7 times, it's not as bad as it sounds because she married one guy twice. Now, my Aunt Betty had 2 criteria when she sought men. First criteria was they had to be far more wealthy than she was. The second criteria was she wanted them to be married. And if a man fulfilled one of those 2 criteria, preferably if they fulfilled both, then they were a fair mark to my Aunt Betty. In her later years, on this particular January evening, my Aunt Betty was in her late 80s. And she no longer had the ability to have both criteria. Her previous husband had died just about 6 months before, and she had married him because he was married when he met her, and he divorced his wife of 30 plus years to marry her. So this time she was going for the money. And she found it in the nursing home. She found Marvin. Now Marvin was in his 90s. Marvin seemed like a pretty happy guy. He wasn't very communicative, but he seemed happy. Turned out he had owned a general store in Minton, Indiana, which is where my Aunt Betty was housed and in the nursing home. And what happened was the officer was calling my father from Scottsburg, Indiana. Now, that's kind of crazy. How does my Aunt Betty, who lives in Minton, Indiana, get to Scottsburg, Indiana? Turns out that the young fellow that she took a liking to, his children, decided that perhaps Aunt Betty should be stopped. So they got an injunction to stop Aunt Betty from marrying him. The injunction covered the entire state of Indiana, but that was not going to preclude a marriage. My Aunt Betty broke him out, headed down I-69 to Kentucky. And there was a bolo placed on my 87-year-old Aunt Betty. picked up by the Indiana State Police, fleeing to Kentucky to marry her 90-plus-year-old boyfriend, who basically sat in the seat next to her going, And my dad said, that is the strangest damn thing I ever heard. My dad was the curator of my Aunt Betty's affairs at that time. They made him go down and get her. My dad said, well, I don't know if I can get there right now. And they said, well, she's not going to last long in prison. My dad said, you do not want to put her in the county jail, because I want to tell you something. She'll be bringing somebody out there. Somebody in there's got money. I know they're in it. Or they're married. He got her back to Mendon, got her back in the nursing home. That lasted about 3.5 months. The children were looking for a place to put the young male that was in his 90s. They did not get there fast enough. She broke him out again. This time he was headed to Ohio. And again, the police in the neighboring county stopped her. And they said, you have got to stop breaking this man out of the nursing home. Well, they got her back. My dad had to take her car away. What else was there? I can only say that my Aunt Betty, when she passed away, she had a book of many names of gentlemen. 6 of the names, 7 names were crossed out. 6 of the names we knew. Those were the 6 men that she was married to. But there was a 7th name. And it was the first name on the list. It was also crossed out. I knew why that name was crossed out. And I think I was the only one who, because my grandmother had told me. That's the story for another time.
Baby was a bad mama too. Kind of admire her. Apparently, I've been doing something wrong. I should have been keeping a list. I've heard people say you should read the obituaries and try and find your husband, you know. Oh, she did that too. Lord, she was a bad mama. Oh, I wish. I'd like to see a picture of her. I had friends been married so many times. I used to tell them, look, if you get married again before I get married once, I'm going to know something about it. I had a cousin who married so many times, we started calling him Johnny Cars. Listen, do not forget the dates I have given you for the next events. You remember what they are? No. March 18th is really important because that's when, as I recall, Storytelling Guild from 2 to 4 over Zoom with Ken Otis and Liz Meyer. Also, on Thursday, March 19th, you want to go to Indiana Landmarks. Eunice Trotter will be there talking about the Garvey Out movement here in Indianapolis. That's from 6 to 7:30 p.m., but we want you to register ahead of time. Go to freetownvillage.org. Also, you want to register. It's free. You don't have to pay anybody anything, but you might want to send us a donation. The Storytelling Arts of Indiana, SAI 4421. Did I leave out a number?
44321.
44321 on your phone that's smarter than you. And don't forget Adam Booth. on March 14th, Saturday at 7 p.m. I'm gonna be there unless I win the lottery tonight. I'm gonna stop and buy a ticket on the way home. That way I won't have to worry about nobody breaking into that house because I won't be there. But now listen, we're doing a drawing right now so that we can give you free tickets to one of our upcoming events. And let me tell you about the last break-in at my school. We used to collect pennies, and one of the, you know, those big old jugs of water, and we would collect the pennies for the arts. And it was a heavy jug, and it was full. I don't know how many pennies were in it, but one day between dismissal and 4:30 p.m., somebody walked in the front door, picked up that humongous bottle of pennies. I don't know how they did it. They had to have $1. Rolled it through the school, out the bus door entry, and popped it in the back of their car or truck. And we were running around the school looking like, what happened to the pennies? What happened to the pennies? So that was the last break-in that I know about. And they were thieves. I can't abide a thief, okay? Now, my last break-in at my house, I was just home lying in my bed and minding my own business. I wasn't feeling too good, and as an old lady, when you ring the doorbell, it takes me a minute to get up and go to the door. And a lot of people will leave before you get there. I don't mind, because I know that if you ring my doorbell, you don't really know me. But I looked on my camera on my phone, and I could see this gentleman walking back down the driveway, so I just sat back down. No, I laid back down, but that's my favorite position, mind you. And then I heard a noise that I couldn't understand. I don't know what that noise is. It's not my ice maker, but it's somewhere in the kitchen. So I got up, got my cane, turned off the alarm, hobbled down the hall, heard another noise. I don't know what that was either. So as I get to my living room, right next to my leather recliner, that's also a massage chair, I hear glass breaking. And this sucker has gone down the street, around the corner, through my neighbor's yard. And because he could not open the kitchen door or the sunroom door, decides to take a concrete block and throw it through my sunroom window. Not once, but twice. Now, being the Christian woman I am, I just started cussing at the top of my lungs. And I can look back at the video and see when he realizes that someone is in the house. And he jumps down off the pile of wood I have outside my patio and takes off running. I want to tell them there is nothing inside this house. I don't know who's watching this little old lady. But come on in here and get these antique TVs and we'll talk. Well, that's the last break-in I can talk about. But now I'm here to give you the results. In third place, our winner is, and we do want you to stay around for pictures. Our third place winner is Rick. Congratulations. Our second place winner is, I see Liza B. Did I have a Liza B? Lisa. Okay, thank you. And our first place winner, congratulations. Our first place winner is Sheldon. Congratulations. You guys did a great job. And we're going to have a drawing for some free tickets. Listen, I'm going to be there. Y'all need to come on out. If the weather's not as good as it is today, you can still come, all right? If you come up, Shannon will take pictures. Thank you for doing all of our live streaming and taking lovely pictures of all these lovely